Hi everybody, Jason here. Hope you're all doing well. Today we've got another Ask Jason, and today I have it's an interesting question about workflow, creativity, and how that relates to flow, and basically wu-wei, which a lot of people are interested in what I have to say about Taoism. So I'm going to tackle this one today. And guys, again, make sure you're subscribed, make sure you like all my videos. Make sure you share it with your friends or share it through your social media accounts. It's the only way that my work can reach a wider audience. So with your love and appreciation, it'll reach whoever it needs to reach and inspire. So also, if you're inspired by my work, head on over to my Patreon account, and any small contribution helps. And as you see, a lot of work on the way, constantly working, constantly in service to you guys. So I hope you're enjoying all of my work on Eastern spirituality. My aim here is, to teach the authentic teachings, and, there's not much on YouTube about the authentic teachings. So, I know there is an audience out there for it, and you guys are, I deeply appreciate your love and support. So today, as I said, we've got an interesting question, and it's from Clement Tai. And Clement Tai, in the subject of this message via my website, he says, feeling stuck. So he says, Dear Jason, I don't want to bother you, but I feel I need your help. I read your book, Effortless Living, and I absolutely loved it. I'm convinced of the truth, beauty, and power of living according to Tao. Yes, very good news. But on the other hand, I feel somehow stuck and passive right now. Astrology and numerology tells us I need to express myself, and I have a lot of creative ideas, but nothing comes out of it. I start nothing. You seem to achieve so much through your books and videos. How to reconcile this with non-doing? How did you open the tap to let your creativity and work flow? Sorry to bother you with that, but now I'm so much afraid to waste my life. Best regards, and thank you for the great work. No need to apologize, Clement. I was there once upon a time. Procrastination can be a killer. Just the knowing to what the next step is sometimes in life can be difficult. We have a lot of people, entrepreneurs and this, who have all these ads on YouTube and television and so forth and so on, telling people, you should do this and you should do this. And it's purely anecdotal most of the time, and it doesn't relate to your life at all, So you don't want to kind of fall for any sort of form of hustle porn of, going out there and getting it, unless you have an aptitude for it, you know what I mean? But I'm assuming that a lot of people who come across my videos are like Clement, are concerned about their spiritual well-being in a world where, you've got to do a lot, apparently, and you've got to axe to grind, and, you've got to achieve all these things. And as you all know from listening to my videos, especially with Taoism, which Clement is kind of speaking about, is that there is a peace and a harmony and actually a truth in non-doing, in the element of not overexerting your energies and just allowing life to be as it will without trying to interfere or promote your own agenda upon life. So, first of all, Clement mentions astrology and numerology. And Clement, I would say I wouldn't even worry about what they have to say in relation to what you're talking about, because in the end of the day, we can believe any sort of divination tool, but you can still go out and do it. And though sometimes those divination tools may be correct, there's a lot of times that they're not. And so when we're talking about Taoism, even though the I Ching is a part of Taoism, the I Ching itself is, first and foremost, is a book of wisdom. It became a book of divination further in its evolution. And so when you read the I Ching, you see that they're talking, it's a deep book about psychology and not so much about the yellow stalks and divination. So I would say, first and foremost, don't worry about what any sort of divination school of thought has to say about whether you should do anything or not. Trust what's in here. Trust what's in here first. Remember, the wisdom of Taoism is first and foremost a philosophy and doesn't depend on any system like that. So, you said, you seem to achieve so much through your books and videos. How to reconcile this with non-doing? How did you open the tap to let your creativity and work flow? First of all, when we talk about wu-wei and we talk about flow and we talk about effortless living, a lot of people may have watched my documentary, The Art of Effortless Living, and they think that we're just going to sit around doing nothing for our whole life. But you haven't watched the sequel, Effortless Action, The Art of Spontaneity, or maybe read my book, Effortless Living, which I'm not completely saying just sit there like a stone and do nothing. You have to live a life. You know, we have a dynamic life and you have to live that life. The idea is part of wu-wei, yes, is non-doing, but it's also effortless action. It's about acting in the world without being attached to the fruits of your labor or stressing about the fruits of your labor or the outcome or the achievement of whatever you're doing, you know. So this is also in the Bhagavad Gita, where in the Bhagavad Gita, there is nishkama karma. So Arjun on the battlefield, you know, he's so concerned about fighting his friends and his family. And Krishna explains to him nishkama karma, which means acting without being attached to the fruits of your own action. Now, nishkama karma and wu-wei are very similar concepts, used differently textually, but they are similar concepts where you need to act, but without identifying with your persona when you act. You are just kind of, in a sense, a limb of the universe. And of course, to get to that stage is a different story. But when we look at Taoism, when we look at wu-wei, you're talking about, if we look at the Zhuangzi. So if we look at Zhuangzi and all of the skill stories in Zhuangzi, there is, like if we look at Butcher Ding, right? Butcher Ding in that story, when Lord Wen Wei is so, you know, astounded by his expert butchery and asks him how he does it, he just said, you know, first all I could see was the ox, and you know, it was cumbersome, and then after 3 years I could see the ox with my spirit, and the blade just glide through, you know, the bones, you know, effortlessly, and then the ox would just fall apart. It's kind of a bit of a gruesome story, probably not for a vegan, but it's not a story about morality. It's a story about how to move efficaciously through life, how to be effective in your life without incurring any harm and without being overwhelmed by obstacles. That's part of the story. I mean, there's other parts of the story too, but it is an analogy about how to live your life, the Butcher Ding story. And the whole Zhuangzi it's about how to live your life. So the point, and what I think you ought to think about, Clement, is how to just get to work without being overwhelmed by the work. Now, when you talk about myself personally, like when I first started writing, you remember, a lot of people are probably new to my channel, but a lot of people don't know I've been teaching Eastern philosophy for over a decade now. And so when I first started out and I first started writing articles and books before I started this whole YouTube game, was that I was somewhat like you, where I thought there was a kind of it felt like a friction between my understanding of the way, of how to follow the way, and also my understanding of, you know, how to get work done, how to write a book, so to speak. So there was a friction of doing versus non-doing. Now, the idea is that you have to get to a stage where the doing feels like non-doing. That's that part of wu-wei, that doing, non-doing. We could translate it as wei wu-wei. And that is also a part of Taoism. That's a part of the Zhuangzi text. And how do you get to that stage? Well, a lot of the time you get to that stage by just getting to work without having your ego, kind of influence you with what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Okay, you want to get some work done. You want to write a book, for example. Just sit down and start writing, and don't have an idea or think too much about what you're doing. Just get to work. And I know that sounds simplistic, but what often happens is if you just get to work without your ego thinking about, is it going to be a good book, or how should I start? And then you procrastinate for another week, and the next minute, a year's gone. I have, because I have been writing for over 10 years, through those 10 years, I have guided a few budding writers, and some continued on the path and some dropped away. And always those ones who dropped away overthought what they were doing. They were constantly overthinking what they were doing. And what is like kryptonite for Taoist thinking is overthinking itself. So you need to learn to just act without thinking. And so that doesn't mean that there is no thinking, of course, let's not get stupid, but the overthinking element of it. So, and I learned a lot of this through, especially my last few books, is that I had the idea already in my mind, and the book had been gestating for, say, a year. And then, for whatever reason, the time just feels right, and I just sit down and I just write. And it just, the process is far more effortless than when I wrote my first book, which felt like it was very labored, So that comes also about from repetition. You asked me, how do I continue to get keep my workflow, consistent and constantly always making videos and writing books. Not to sound too simplistic, but it's just a product of repetition. It's like anything. If you train or you practice meditation for a long period of time, the ability to get into deeper states of meditation is very easy because, again, I think it's part of repetition. There is a part of our mind that finds familiar pathways within our neural network, and it becomes much more easy to follow. What happens when you're trying to begin something new? Those neural pathways have not even developed, and you're trying something and your mind doesn't really know what's happening. And so you don't have anything that's wound up in your subconscious that can just come out automatically. And so, like with any training, you are, in some sense, when we're talking about knowledge, you are also training your hot cognition, that aspect of ourselves that is automatic and effortless. But the irony is, to get to that stage, you need your cold cognition, you need your intellect to, as you already know from watching my videos and reading my books, is that there has to be an intellectual component, but there has to be a balance between both. If we look at the Hua Hu Qing in Taoism, the later teachings of Lao Tzu, then the integral being is someone who has a healthy balance of intellect and intuition, but it doesn't mean that you overcompensate for one and the other. There has to be actually, let me rephrase that. Not that there has to be overcompensation, but the allocation of energy you need towards the intellect is far less than what you have for the intuition, because we are an emotional animal, and primarily we are intuitive. But if you can just allocate just a little bit more attention to the intellect and study and learn and maybe learn how to manifest your creative ideas, then that may require a bit more intellectual effort. And so, but there has to be that balance, and you will know the sweet spot within yourself, because you'll have a feeling about that. Obviously, if you're all intellect, you've gone way away from wu-wei, and all you are is a head case. So you don't want to be that. You don't want to start reading, 50 books a week. I know that's not possible, but you know what I mean. I'm exaggerating here, and become a real nutter. You want to find that balance. Keep your mind very steady and tranquil, as you've probably learned through my books and my videos. And from keeping it in that state, then when time for work comes, then it's very easy. So you ask, how to tap into that creativity and workflow that you feel that I have, and I feel that I can still do more, don't get me wrong. And I am trying to do more. I'm not trying to do, you know what I mean? That's paradoxical. But that comes down to my meditation practice as well. So I've been meditating for quite a long time, and trained in many different techniques of meditation. And that's given me the ability for my mind to be a lot more settled throughout most of the day. And so when there is something to do, I can just get down and do it with minimal fuss. And again, that comes with time. That, like I said to you earlier, that wasn't something that was there when I first began writing. I was still pretty much a novice in meditation at that time, and pretty much a novice in philosophy. So a lot of these philosophical concepts within the East had not solidified in my mind as they have now, which gives me more of an ability to speak about it freely. But that comes with time. So I would say that if you have a good meditation practice, something that you follow regularly, then that will give you kind of an anchor in your life and a centeredness, and allow that sort of that wu-wei element of your mind to effortlessly come out of you, and to produce all of these great creative ideas that I'm sure that you have. And so there's no secret, really. There really is no secret. A lot of people say that I've had this question before, but your question was really a lot more vast and covered a lot more areas, and I thought it was really great. So how to reconcile with this non-doing, it's not rocket science. It's basically that you have to get to the state where your work doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like a job. Now, easier said than done, right? When you're doing something that you enjoy, I do. I love this, right? So it's easy for me to say, but not easy for someone who has a 9-to-5 job on Wall Street. It's not as easy, even though it may be easy to get into a state of flow in those areas because of the repetition and the familiar terrain that you traverse every day. But when we're talking about creative ideas, which was the point of Clement's question, is that creativity that we all have deep within us actually can only be produced when we have a settled mind. And so worrying about things like astrology and numerology, what they say, being like handicapped by procrastination and all of these things that we all have about ourselves are nothing to be overly concerned about. That's a stage. I used to suffer a lot with procrastination, a lot before I wrote Enlightenment Now, when I was living in a small little place called Sarapi in Thailand, in a really small cottage. And for about 2 months, I just did nothing. Like the idea of Enlightenment Now was there, but I just couldn't get my head around it. But then that book was a breakthrough once I started writing that book, and I wrote it fairly quickly. And so after that book, when I wrote Fasting the Mind, Effortless Living, and my new book coming out in June, Emotional Intuition for Peak Performance. Those books just it was like I was just spewing these books out of myself, and they just came out effortlessly. But it was that point in time when, back in 2014, when I had a lot of breakthroughs with enlightenment now. And I learned a lot about procrastination. I learned a lot about not just sitting there and doing nothing, but having the procrastination and the concern, which is what Clement has, taking over your mind. That in itself is doing. You're concerned, you're procrastinating, your mind is doing. Do you see? It's doing, it's active. And that you're not going to be able to achieve any work from that state. Sometimes when we just let the body to take over and just do something and just turn our mind off and just let life happen, this is life too. This thing here is life as well. Then you can sometimes achieve the things that you always wanted to achieve, but you are caught in this cycle of overthinking, procrastination, and so forth and so on. So, like I said, there is no secret. You just have to start. Clement wrote, but nothing comes of his creative ideas. Nothing comes out of it. I start nothing. So, if you start nothing, what should be the course of action going forward? Starting something. Now, just start it. I remember the science and practice of humility. There was not really an idea there. Obviously, I wanted to write about humility. And I didn't really know where or how to start, but I knew I just needed to start. And I just started. And the book just became what it is. There was no prior planning for the book. There was just the idea of humility. And obviously I had all of this knowledge in my mind, but the way it was going to be and the way I was going to write it, there was just no thought about it. But all I knew when I was sitting in a little guest house in Tiruvannamalai in India back in 2012 is I just knew I had to start. And sometimes when we just start without thinking, that in itself is an aspect of non-doing. Because you've got to remember, doing, as I mentioned, is still related to the mind as well. When we're actively thinking about things all the time, we are still doing. We're still busy. When this is busy, this is way more torturous than when this is busy. This is torture when this is busy. We've all experienced it. It's physiologically expensive, but it also brings anxiety and stress. So what happens when you just start, usually, and I know this as a writer, and athletes and artists know this, is that when you start and you just get into that repetition, you get into that zone and you begin to experience that flow of non-doing. And I've had writing sessions, sometimes 10 hours, where it felt like only like 2 hours, but my being was just absorbed in what I was writing, and it almost felt like I didn't write it. Even though my wife's saying, "Oh, yes, you did, you idiot," But you know what I mean? So it feels like you didn't even write the book, or you didn't even achieve what you achieved. You see this with athletes when we see a star athlete who's just completely in the zone, and then we say, "Wow, look, he's just so effortless, so graceful," and yes. He got to that stage through just constant training and repetition. When the familiar terrain comes about, he can just put the vehicle in automatic and it just does its thing. It's like poetry in motion. And this comes back to an element of wu-wei that a lot of people don't consider, is that when we look at the Butcher Ding story, he's perfectly calibrated to the environment. So, and he got to that stage, like he said, when he first started cutting the ox up, he had no chance. But now he sees from spirit and he's perfectly calibrated to the environment. He is in a state of wu-wei constantly, a state of flow. And so this is why I would advise Clement just to start whatever his creative ideas are, just to get them started. Because once you do get them started, and you constantly are doing these, it's like myself with writing. When I'm constantly writing, and this decade of writing that I have now allows me just to pick up a pen and paper and just to write effortlessly, and it feels like it doesn't feel laborious anymore. It's become part of my second nature, which is a part of wu-wei too. You got to remember that trained element that Butcher Ding experienced is his second nature. It's become second nature because that has been downloaded in his hot cognition, and it's become just as part of his nature, as much as part of his nature as opening and closing his hand. So yeah, it's an amazing thing if you can really get something started like that, a craft or something creative, because it gives you the ability, if you can just start, to get in that state of wu-wei, that state of flow. It may not happen at the beginning, but it will happen. As you all know, I always talk about I'm a writer and that. So when I do write, when I am in the process of writing a book and I have like a deep work time block in the morning, say from like 8:30 in the morning to 12:30 in the afternoon, consistently on a daily basis, after about half an hour to an hour, that's when I start to it's effortless from there. Look, sure, the first half an hour to an hour sometimes can be a grind, and you find yourself overthinking. Even myself, doing this for so long, still can find myself overthinking, but I get out of that state pretty easily. And so can you too, but you just have to start. I keep harping on about that. But Clement, if you're listening, you just have to get going. And I'm sure that your creative ideas are amazing and wonderful, and they're gestating within you. And we need to see these things manifest in the world. We need more people with highly intelligent and creative ideas to manifest in the world. We don't need any more silliness in the world. We need a sane and creative world, basically. And self-expression is intrinsically tied to wu-wei. It's intrinsically tied to wu-wei. It goes all the way back to martial arts. It goes back to any sort of art form. And we all know this, and cognitive science and that know this now, that we do get in these states of wu-wei when we are constantly in a repetition of a certain skill. That is going to eventually be downloaded and become part of your nature. So, Clement, I would say to you, if you're listening, is that don't be so hung up on that wu-wei is just non-doing. You have to remember non-doing also is non-doing in action as well. Obviously, just non-doing and being at peace, shanti, and meditating all the time, yes, of course, beautiful, beautiful state, the best state. But that state can then be transferred over into action itself. And that is the goal for all of us aspiring spiritual seekers, is that we have to take our spirituality off the meditation cushion or out of the Tai Chi class or the yoga class, and we have to implement that into everyday life and live the teachings and live from that state of awareness, which will contribute to a better world. And that's what the teachings of Taoism, that's what wu-wei actually do. So that's what I would say. I know it's simplistic, but just start. And we don't want to just characterize wu-wei also as just non-doing. That's something that I hope you guys have taken from this video, is that it is non-doing in all life, not just non-doing on the meditation cushion, non-doing in all life. You got to slow this thing down. This thing slows down, then all of the creativity that we all have within ourselves can just begin to come out of ourselves and inspire the world. It's waiting there to be, born. But we have to slow our mind down to give birth to that creative potential that we all have. So I hope you guys all enjoyed the video today. Make sure you like, subscribe, all those things I mentioned at the beginning. And I hope you're all staying fit, healthy, cultivating intelligence, cultivating peace. And because without people like you, then who knows what the world would be like. So enough of my rambling, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Shanti, shanti, shanti.